A photograph captures a moment in time, a smile, a fleeting glance, a place frozen forever. It does not change, it does not shift. What is taken remains exactly as it was, or at least it should. Emma Carter never noticed it at first, a shadow in the corner, a trick of the light, a flaw in the lens, she thought, until it wasn't, until it appeared again and again. It didn't matter where she was, at home, outside, even in broad daylight. The photographs told the same story. She was alone, and yet she wasn't. But the most unsettling part, she never took the last photograph. Stay with us as we uncover what happened to Emma Carter. But be warned, some stories refuse to stay in the past. Emma Carter was a photographer. She saw the world through the lens of her camera, freezing fleeting moments in time. A stranger's smile, the quiet streets at dusk, the ordinary details of life that so often go unnoticed. For years, her photographs were just that, snapshots of the world around her. Until something changed. Until, in the weeks before she vanished, the photographs began to tell a different story. She did not notice it at first. A trick of the light, a fault in the image, a mistake. That's what she told herself. And yet, with each new photograph, the presence remained. In the background, out of focus, waiting. She was alone, and yet she wasn't. The photographs were proof, a presence lurking just beyond what the eye could see. There was no logic to it, no reason, only a feeling, a deep, unshakable certainty that she was being watched, that whatever stood behind her was not meant to be there. She stopped taking pictures. For days, the camera remained untouched, locked away in a drawer. She avoided the reflections in her windows, the dark corners of her home. She convinced herself it was over, that if she ignored it, it would go away. But that was when it became worse. It was not supposed to be there. It never had been before. And yet in that moment, as the flash illuminated the room, it stood right behind her, no longer a shadow, no longer distant, close enough to touch. In the days before she disappeared, Emma Carter began to change. She stopped answering her phone. Messages went unread. Invitations declined. Her social media, once filled with snapshots of everyday life, fell silent. The world outside carried on without her. But inside these walls, something was happening. Something no one could see. She became obsessed, searching for an explanation, a flaw in her camera, a glitch in the software, a simple mistake in the light. But no matter how many times she adjusted the lens, changed the settings, examined each photo with meticulous care, the figure remained, always in the background, always watching. She tried to rationalize it. She told herself it was paranoia, that she was imagining patterns where none existed. But the fear grew, slowly, insidiously, until it became unbearable, until it seeped into every moment of her waking life. She began to feel it even when the camera wasn't there. A presence, a weight in the room with her, a coldness that settled in the air when she was alone. She turned to the one place she hadn't yet considered, her own reflection. If the camera could see it, perhaps the mirror could too. That was the thought. That was the hope. But what she found only deepened the terror. A slow zoom into the photograph taped to the mirror. It's another self-portrait, but this time, Emma is standing directly in front of the glass, her face pale, lips pressed into a thin line. And behind her, where nothing should be, where only empty space should exist, stands the figure. Its face is obscured, blurred beyond recognition, but its shape is unmistakable. It does not belong there. She took the photo at 3:12 a.m. It was the last one she ever developed. Hours later, she packed away every camera she owned. She covered the mirrors. She stopped taking pictures altogether. If the camera could see it, if the mirror could reflect it, then perhaps, just perhaps, It had always been there, waiting, watching, and now it knew she had seen it. That night, the apartment was silent. No photographs, no reflections, just darkness. But at 3:12 a.m., something woke her. A shift in the air, a pressure in the room, the unmistakable feeling of being watched. The darkness lingers. A long pause, then click. The sound of a camera shutter. The screen remains black. She did not take the picture, but her camera did. In the final days before her disappearance, Emma Carter was no longer the same person. The woman who once captured the world in her photographs now avoided the lens altogether. She stopped sleeping, stopped leaving her apartment. Something had shifted, and though she never spoke of it, those who knew her could sense the change. Emma was not the first to experience something like this. Stories of unseen figures lurking just beyond human perception have existed for centuries. Shadows that move when they shouldn't, faces appearing in places they were never meant to be. Some dismiss them as tricks of the mind. Others are not so sure. A pattern, a presence, something that had been watching long before she ever picked up a camera. She did not set up the camera. The footage was never meant to exist, and yet there it was, recording, watching. The video plays in silence. The room remains empty for several long, excruciating seconds. Then, movement, a shift in the shadows. The covers on the bed are pulled back, as if someone is stepping out, but there is no one there. 3:09 a.m. The moment the bed moved, a simple shift, nothing more. But Emma was not in the room. She had not slept that night, and she was not alone. 3:10 a.m., the moment she saw it, the last confirmed image of Emma Carter. 3:11 a.m., gone, without a word, without a struggle, as if she had never been there at all. The last photograph Emma Carter ever took. The last proof that she existed before she vanished without a trace. No signs of struggle, no forced entry, just an empty apartment and a single frame, capturing a moment no one was meant to see. She was alone, but she wasn't. There was no sign of forced entry, no struggle, no indication that anything unnatural had occurred, and yet Emma Carter was gone. The door had been locked from the inside, her personal belongings untouched. The only thing left behind were the photographs. The police investigation yielded nothing. No leads, no evidence, no reasonable explanation. Officially, her case remains open. But those who examined the details, those who looked closer, could not ignore what was right in front of them. Some believe Emma was hallucinating, that the figure was nothing more than a trick of light and shadow, a product of an overactive mind unraveling in isolation. But if that were true, why did the images remain? Why, when forensic specialists examined the negatives, did they confirm that no alterations had been made? The moment it revealed itself, the moment Emma saw it, the moment before she was taken. The figure does not move, does not shift. It stands still, unnatural, wrong. And yet its form is unmistakable, human-like but off. Its proportions slightly distorted, as if it doesn't quite belong in this world. Authorities conducted searches. Friends and family pleaded for answers. But the investigation found nothing. No security footage of her leaving the building. No signs of struggle. No unknown DNA. It was as if she had never been there at all. But someone had been there, something, and it had been waiting. Then the reports began, others seeing the figure, unexplained distortions in their photographs, unfamiliar shapes appearing in reflections where there should be none. Emma Carter was never found, but whatever was in her photographs never left. The case of Emma Carter remains open, a cold file in an old police station, gathering dust. Every year, the anniversary of her disappearance passes without anyone coming forward with new information. Her friends, her family, those who knew her, still wonder what happened, but they are left with only one certainty. Emma Carter vanished without a trace, as though she had never existed. But there are some who believe the answers lie not in the disappearance, but in the pictures themselves. Could Emma have unknowingly captured something far beyond her understanding? Perhaps it wasn't her that the figure was after. Perhaps she was merely the observer, a means to an end. For weeks after her disappearance, reports began to surface from people in the area. People who, too, started noticing strange occurrences. A shadow in the corner of a room, a fleeting glimpse in the reflection of a window. Something that had been following Emma. Was it still following them? It wasn't long before those who had witnessed it firsthand, the ones who had caught the figure in their photos, began to share their stories. At first, they seemed like coincidence, innocent encounters. But when these accounts started to align, a disturbing pattern emerged. One man, just like Emma, found that after snapping a picture of an empty street, he saw it in the corner of the shot. Barely a figure, more a shadow. But the longer he stared at it, the clearer it became. Something was standing just beyond the frame, something that didn't belong. It had always been there, watching, waiting, following. The pattern was clear now. The figure appeared in moments of solitude, in places of isolation. And like Emma, the longer people were in its presence, the closer it came to them. Those who saw it, could they escape it? Could they outlast its presence? Or was it, as some feared, a fate sealed long before their first photograph? The photographs continue to appear, not just from Emma's life, but from others who have unknowingly captured the same presence, the same haunting figure, now part of their lives, just as it had been part of Emma's. Could it be that no one is truly alone? That something has been watching us all along, waiting for the right moment to step into the frame? Somewhere out there, there are others, people like Emma, people who don't yet realize what they've captured, but the truth, much like the figure in their photos, is closing in. As the years passed, more and more photographs began to surface. It wasn't just Emma. It wasn't just the people who had been in her life. No, the figure has been seen in photographs for decades. Some trace its origins back to the early 20th century, a time when cameras first began to capture the world in a way that eyes could not. It's almost as if, from the very beginning, it has been there, lurking just outside the frame, closer with each passing year. And no one seems to know why. Was Emma Carter its first victim? Or was she merely one in a long line of observers, those who saw it and never truly understood what it meant, until it was too late? Whatever it is, wherever it comes from, its presence continues to haunt those who unknowingly welcome it into their lives. And now the question remains, who is next? This story doesn't end here. The photos continue to surface. The figure continues to watch. What do you think is really happening? Who or what is it? And why has it chosen those who have crossed its path? Do you think you could see it too? What if it's already been with you, hidden in the corners of your own photos? What if, one day, you looked through your camera roll, only to find that it's been watching you all along? We want to hear from you. What's the scariest thing you've ever encountered in a photo? Have you ever caught a glimpse of something you shouldn't have? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next chilling mystery we'll unravel together. And remember, some things are meant to be forgotten, but others linger, watching, waiting.